Okay, third-party data. Why do I keep talking about third-party data, and what does that even mean? So a very simple example of third-party data would be weather data sets, or maybe demographic data like the US Census Bureau. So first-party data is the data you have about your own company in your own database, or maybe in a variety of different point systems, an ERP system or a CRM system like Salesforce. You probably have it now connected to your database, and that's where it is, and you can do analysis on it. That's your first party data. Your third party data is anything that's out there that you can buy access to, or that's just freely available. And what I've found over my decades now of doing data analysis is that the vast majority of companies are very focused on their own internal first party data. And oftentimes they're even struggling with that. They're not even able to really get all the value out of their first party data. So what we did here with Orion is that we not only built Orion to be a great analyst on your first party data, your own data that you own, but also have access to third party data. An example of that would be that we're working with a retail company. And this retail company saw a spike in, let's say, ice cream in Southern California last week. So now, does that mean that there will be more demand for ice cream next week in Southern California? And for that, it was beneficial to actually pull in the weather data set and say, you know what, it was unusually warm that week, and that's why we probably saw that spike in ice cream. But historically, we don't expect it to be another hot week next week. And so we shouldn't necessarily place additional orders for more ice cream to be brought to the stores then. So it would be a very simple example of third-party data being used with your own data. We had a cyber threat situation where there was a huge weather event in Florida, and it caused a bunch of outages and everything. So there was a huge drop in traffic and web traffic for a couple days in Florida, which could mean something, of course, to the cyber threat world. And you could now go and analyze your own data endlessly. But just a quick check on this, major flooding and hurricane event made it clear that actually this is not related to anything in the cyber threat space. This was just an external event. There are a bunch of other examples like holidays, right? There's so many different holidays in so many different countries. So Orion being aware of when something is happening where allows us to correlate these events and say, you know what, let's not go too deep on our internal analysis on figuring out why this happened in our own data set in this silo. But actually, this might have happened because there was a holiday in Germany, and that's why people bought a lot more on this one day than they would have otherwise, because physical stores were closed and the online stores were available. Now, those were just examples on publicly available data sets. But beyond that, there's a lot of data sets you can actually buy. So one of the things we did is we actually bought access to benchmarking reports and industry reports. Now, those are reports that, a really good analyst, for example, if you hire McKinsey or Bain, or one of the large, any of the large consulting firms, they should be aware of industry trends. They're experts on supply chain. They're experts on consumer packaged goods. And now, as we think of Orion as a very well-versed analyst, we want to make sure that Orion is aware of these industry reports as well. So you don't need to do anything as you use Orion. Already on the back end, we have connected Orion to these industry reports and benchmarks. So Orion now knows what is normal in your industry. What kind of marketing spend is normal? What kind of seasonality is a common pattern? And that creates for a very well-rounded analyst. And that's what we're really building here at Gravity. We're building a really well-rounded analyst that is aware of these third-party data sets. Now, we have found that there can be an overwhelming amount of third-party data sets. Large language models, if you tell them, hey, here is a interesting data set, they will try to find correlation. And you can spend a lot of resources, AI resources, on investigating these correlations. And so we built out a manager of third-party data sets that thinks about the question at hand that you have, right? Let's say you're the chief revenue officer, and understands if it even makes sense to look at third-party data. And if it makes sense to look at third-party data, which third-party data to bring in. So a big part of Orion is that decision-making of like, Does it make sense to bring it in? And if so, which data sources should we bring in? So we don't just go on a wild goose chase. And that's in essence third-party data and why it's so crucial to Orion.